So the second stage of the spline IK is to introduce some squash and stretch of the joints. At the moment, when I move the controller, it doesn't do anything. The joints don't squash and stretch with it, they kind of get left behind. What would be nice is to be able to lift the IKSpline control and the joints will all scale up to it. The other way around, if I squash the control down, then the joints will squash as well. So in this example then, what we need to find out is the scale factor of the curve. And to do that, we'll be using a multiply divide node. It's quite straightforward maths. So let's say if I move the curve so it's sort of twice the distance, the scale factor is 2. And the way you calculate that is you divide the current length. So let's say it was originally 2 and I've scaled it twice, so it's now 4. So you take the current length and divide it by the original length, and that gives you the scale factor. So that's the simple maths that we need to set up, but a multiply divide node will give us that. And then once we've got the scale factor, then we will pump that back into the scale x. As you can see, the x defines the length. So we'll feed the scale factor of the curve into the scale of each joint, and that will allow each joint to squash and stretch. Okay, so let's have a look and get that going. Okay, I'm just going to restore this back to 0. So there's a little bit of mel in here. Let's go to the outliner. So what we need to do is expose the information of the length of the curve. Select the spine curve, and you need to type in the mel script window there. You need to type in arclen, which is short for arc length, and you basically are space minus ch, which is control history, and you're giving it a value of 1, which is turning it on effectively. So you're turning on the construction history of the length, which is exposing the value to us. Press return, and nothing seems to happen until let's go into the shapes, expose that. Let's have a look at the shape of the curve itself. Control A to go to attributes, and you'll see that the curve info tab is the result of typing in that arc length. So this is literally arc length space minus ch space 1 will expose this curve info node. And as you can see, the arc length has a value of 18. So we need to remember that, and that's the original length. Okay. If I move the controller up, go back to the the curve shape, and you'll see the arc length has now changed. So it's given us the constant length of that arc. Okay, and that's what we're going to tap into. So let me just restore that back to default. All right. So in the node editor, we're going to set up a multiply divide node, which will give us a scale factor. So under Window, go to Node Editor. You'll find that the node editor is such a visual interface for making connections and doing doing things that you always used to have to do with scripts in Maya. So Node Editor was introduced relatively recently, and you'll just find it's very, very easy to control. Okay, so let's clear the graph. So we clear everything out. I'm going to middle drag the spine curve shape in here, and click on the output connections, which will allow us to get to the curve info node. So this is literally what we want to get to. Okay, so the curve info node tells us the current value of the curve, and this is what we're going to feed into the multiply divide node. So to create a multiply divide node, press Tab in the node editor, and you will see that you get this space line editor to start typing multiply divide, and you'll see that multiply divide node is there. Select it and hit Tab again, and you will see that it's given as a multiply divide node. Okay. As you can see with the node editor, each node has a little white dot for input and output. So you can start connecting outputs of one thing, feed it into the inputs of another thing. So what we want to do is click on the output of the curve, and we want the arc length. Okay, and we're going to feed this into the multiply divide input 1x. Okay. Double click the multiply divide node, and here we'll see in the attribute editor we've got the arc length feeding into input 1. Okay, now so this is the current value of the arc, and we know the original value is 18, so we're just going to type that in. The original value will never change. Okay, and we want to divide them together. So the output now of the multiply divide node will give us the scale factor. So if the current length is 36 and the original length was 18, it gives us a scale factor of 2. Okay. So the output now of the multiply divide node is the scale factor, and so what we need to do is feed this into the scale x of the joints. The best way of doing this is select all the joints. So let's go select them all individually, middle drag them into the node editor. If you're like me and you want that little bit of sort of organization, let's organize them all. You don't have to. I just find it kind of makes so joint 2, joint 3. It just gives you a clear path to see where everything is. Joint 4, joint 5, 6, and 7. Okay. So literally, we want the output x of the multiply divide node going into the scale x of that joint. Output x goes into scale x. Output x, scale x, and just repeat output x all the way down the joint chain. Scale x, output x, scale x, scale x, output x, which is the result of the input multiply divide node, goes into scale x. So you've got your scale factor here through dividing the new arc, the new length by the original one. That gives us the scale factor, and we're feeding that into the scale x of the joints. So I can close that down, and then basically if I now move the controls, you can see that it's scaling everything quite nicely. So you get that really nice behavior that a spline IK will give you. Okay. So just reset that. So that's the scale factor. It seems like there's a lot of maths there, but once you go through the process, it's a relatively easy thing. You're just finding out how much to scale the joints by.